welcome to our Happy Hootings project. This card is perfect for retirement, new job or a new home. So let's jump right in. You're going to need some foiled card, a pattern topper, some Rinea and a lovely craft card blank. So you'll notice I have some offcuts, so today's theme is using a par offcuts. Starting with my topper, I'm going to measure to see the size of the topper, and that's going to lead into the design I'm going to use for my foiled background. So I have some nested die shapes that we can use on our machine, and these have some stitched effect, and I thought that'd be really cool to use on this foiled background. Okay, so you want to pick the one that's closest to the size of your topper. So I'm going to go for the 114mm square, and our topper is 10 by 10. So that allows enough room for the stitching around the outside, and we'll be ready to go. Pop your card onto the mat, and we're going to do a background scan so that we can match the shape up to our pattern on our card. So we're going to pop that up into the top left corner. Gently tap it down. It's a really fresh mat, so I was quite conscious of not sticking it to the mat. So there goes that background scan. It only takes a few moments just to feed through and back again. And there's our scan. We can drop down the opacity of the scan so it's a bit easier to see our shape when we're moving it. And we're going to go to draw that. So I'm going to use a Sarasa Clipper gel pen, which is closely matched to our foil card. So that matches both our foiled card and the Rinea oiled paper in Merlot. And because we have a clip on that pen, I'm going to be using the Brother Universal pen holder. Pop that into the pen holder and lock it in. Okay, and then we can just give it a gentle tug and make sure it's well seated in there. Load that into our machine and we can get it drawing. So back to our machine, we're going to go to draw and get it to go. So it does take about 5 minutes just because it's got all those little stitches to do. So in a minute you're going to see it drawing those stitches out. So I have speeded this up for today's video. But the gel pen is perfect for this project. It's a fast drying gel pen, so we don't need to worry about it smudging. And it works really well on top of the foil too. So when we are creating with draw and cut files, you are better to draw first then cut, unless you're working with a really slow drying pen. Okay, so it's going to do the corners next, and that's the drawing done. So then we can take out the pen and load it, very gently remove it from the holder. Then we can go to cut it out. So I'm just going to use the regular standard auto blade, drop my pressure down to 9 because the card that we're using is only thin, and let that cut a square. That can then be unloaded from the machine and removed from the mat. And there we go. So check that up against your topper and make sure you've got plenty of room. And if you think it still needs a bit more contrast, I'm just going to mount it onto a thin bit of white card, just so that we get that little outline around the edge that's going to mirror our print on the actual topper itself. Now I'm going to load up some pieces around my topper, and this is to protect my mat from the foil. So this is actually in spoil shield and I'm just using some of the centre pieces just to protect my mat, as I'm using a brand new mat. I'm also going to be reusing some foil as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the machine itself to trace that outline that you can see in our topper. So you want to highlight that centre panel because we're going to be raising that out of that background. So we're going to go to Scan, Direct Cut and use the machine. Going to change to black and white because we've got that nice white key line around the outside. Change the lever position because we've been drawing, so we just need to lower it back down again. And then it's going to scan and trace, and we can resize that trace so we just focus on the area that we actually want to trace. Go to preview and you can see it's picked up a few extra bits and pieces, so we can use ignore object size to get rid of most of it. Go OK, OK again, and we can go to draw, and then we can foil it. So we're going to place our foil over the top. And I'm using the foil quill for this foiling, so you'll just literally pop in your hot pen into your machine and just let that go over your foil. Okay, so here's our foiling done, and you can see it's gone around those edges. And I've also used that centre shape to cut out so that I can remove my owl from my centre panel. And you can see just how sticky my new mat is. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to move on to my Rinea next. So I'm marking up where I want to cut my foil pieces, and this is because I want to replace that centre band of the topper with some Rinea foil. So I'm using some gold starstruck. I thought that replaced the pattern in the original quite nicely. It's going to give it that touch of luxury sparkle. So I've lined that up against the topper to mark the original measurements. Then I'm going to double check, measure twice, cut once and all that. Going to place that back into my trimmer. There we go. So again, I'm checking, check and double check. Then I'm going to pop that back onto my Rinea and try and match the pattern if possible. If not, don't worry. And then we can trim that up. Okay, so that's ready to go onto our topper. So I'm going to use some PVA to adhere that to my backing. And the point of using the wet glue to do this is that it's going to give you a little bit of wiggle room. So you want to make sure it's flush on the outside edge. It doesn't matter if it overhangs slightly on the inside edge, but on the outside edge you want it to be perfect. Do the same with the other piece. I'm going to stick that on. And again, be careful with that outside edge. Set that to one side to dry before then sticking it to our white card. So this is going to give us that thin white border that I was talking about. And then we can trim that up. Okay, so trim that so you've got a nice even border all the way around. And then set that to one side to dry again. Moving on to our foiled piece, we're going to go back to that same PVA glue. Map that onto the foiled card. And then that's going to go onto our craft card. So the foiled card was just done with a laser print, then with toner reactive foil over the top and run it through a laminator. So that's how we got that foiled pattern in the background. But you can also buy pre-foiled sheets if you wish. So I'm going to burnish the back of my card with my bone folder so I don't get a shiny patch on the front. That's going to give us a nice crisp fold. So I'm going to apply some PVA to my topper. But at this point, if you wanted to use 3D foam, you could. I'm just going to use just a few dots. Don't need to use a lot with this glue. Make sure you get it the right way up. And press that down. Okay, so I've cut some flowers out of Rinea foiled paper in Merlot and the Starstruck, and also some Starstruck Gold. So the larger flowers I've cut from the Merlot and Merlot Starstruck. Now I'm going to put 2 veins on the back of each petal, flip it over and use the larger ball tip to just dent that centre. 2 veins in each petal, flip it over and press it down. So it doesn't take very much to do these at all. With the smaller pieces I use the large ball for the stamens, which makes them form a nice little cup. And then I flip over and use a smaller ball tool for the little centres. You just want to make sure when you're doing this, you're doing it on the back of that Starstruck Gold. So I'm going to use some PVA to stick these pieces together. But I do advise that when doing this, that you're actually going to leave it overnight to set before you try and mount these onto the front of your card. And just use a little drop of glue in the centre just to rest those little cup shapes onto. So I just press that down in the middle. bit more glue. And put that in. So with that little centre dot, you want to do quite a generous drop of glue, just so that it's touching that dome as it's drying. Leave those overnight so they set really well. Okay, so we've waited overnight. Our flowers are now set and we're ready to assemble our card. So I'm going to put my little topper panel onto a shadow panel that I've cut from some bonbon, which sounds fantastic card. So it's got a really similar tone to the Merlot foiled paper, but it has like a glittery sparkle in it. So this card is very much sparkles throughout. If you do find that your little centres come out, it just means that your drop of glue wasn't quite big enough. You can just pop that in very carefully. This is definitely not the card to be making last minute, because we don't want to have to rush that drying process. Let's stick a bit more glue on the back of this flower. And you'll notice I'm tessellating the petals together. So rather than having one flower over the top of the other, it looks a bit more natural if we actually tessellate them. So I'm going to pop a little bit of 3D foam tape onto the back of my topper. If you want to do more than one layer, you can do. And I do always do a little press test just to make sure that nothing dips in the middle. So if you're finding it does dip, just put a little bit of foam just in the centre, especially if you're going to put the card in the post. So I'm going to slide this underneath our flowers, pop that in place, do any adjustments to the flowers that's needed, and let that dry totally. So what I did after this stage was I did a little floral sentiment and another little strip of the gold Rinea just along that bottom edge to finish off the card. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to watch other videos. Bye!